The Vel'Korath Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They were not just powerful, they were absolute. 17 different species served under their banner, each one conquered and brought to heel over countless generations. Their fleets numbered in the millions. Their technology could bend gravity and tear holes in the fabric of space itself. In all their long history, they had never known defeat. High Admiral Zethvorin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Divine Conquest, and watched the stars streak past as his fleet traveled through compressed space. His body was tall and thin, covered in plates of natural armor that shifted from deep purple to black depending on his mood. Forearms folded behind his back. His head was elongated, with compound eyes that saw in spectrums other species could not imagine. Mandibles clicked softly as he studied the tactical display before him. 300 warships followed behind him. It was a standard subjugation fleet. Nothing special. Nothing extraordinary. Just enough firepower to crush any resistance and claim another world for the Dominion. Their target was a small planet called New Geneva. It sat at the edge of explored space, far from the major trade routes and political centers. The world belonged to a species called humans. Zethvorin had read the reports on them. They were unremarkable. Soft bodies, no natural weapons, short lifespans. They had spread to only 47 star systems in their brief time among the stars. They were beneath notice, but the Dominion noticed everything. And New Geneva had resources the Dominion wanted. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, a younger Vel'Korath named Verthan, "we will arrive at the target world in 6 hours." "Good," Zethvorin replied. His voice was deep and resonant, carrying the weight of centuries of authority. "What resistance can we expect?" Verthan consulted his display. "Minimal, Admiral. Our intelligence indicates the planet has a population of approximately 200,000 humans. Mostly civilians, scientists, farmers. There is a small military garrison, but their numbers are insignificant. Perhaps 300 soldiers with light weapons and a handful of defense platforms in orbit." Zethvorin's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Then this will be finished before the evening meal." He turned to look out the massive viewing window at the front of the bridge. The stars were beautiful, cold and distant and eternal. The Vel'Korath had claimed so many of them over the millennia. What was one more? Far ahead, unaware of the doom approaching them, the people of New Geneva went about their lives. New Geneva was a beautiful world. It had been terraformed over 3 generations, transformed from a barren rock into a garden. Rolling hills covered in engineered grasses stretched to the horizon. Forests of modified earth trees grew in carefully planned patterns. Rivers ran clear and clean through valleys where small towns had sprung up. The capital city was called Haven. It was not a large city by the standards of the core human worlds. Perhaps 80,000 people lived there, in buildings that mix modern technology with an older, more comfortable style. There were parks and schools and hospitals. There were cafes where people gathered to talk and laugh. There were children playing in the streets. Commander Lydia Chun stood at the window of her office in the military garrison and watched. The sun set over the western mountains. She was 43 years old, with short black hair that was starting to show streaks of gray. Her face was weathered but kind. She had served in the Terran Defense Force for 20 years, and this posting to New Geneva was supposed to be her last assignment before retirement. A quiet world. A peaceful world. A place where nothing ever happened. She should have known better. Her communicator beeped. She answered it. "Commander, we have a situation." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Torres, her second in command. He sounded worried. "What kind of situation?" "Long-range sensors have detected a fleet approaching the system. 300 ships, Commander. They're not human." Chun felt her stomach drop. She had trained for this. Every soldier in the Terran Defense Force trained for this. But training was different from reality. Training did not prepare you for the cold fear that gripped your heart when the moment actually came. How long until they arrive? 6 hours. Maybe less. 6 hours. She had 6 hours to prepare a world of 200,000 people for an alien invasion. She had 300 soldiers. A handful of orbital defense platforms. Some anti-air batteries scattered around the city. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But she would do what she could. Sound the alert, she said. Wake everyone up. I want all civilians moving to the underground shelters immediately, and get me a line to Earth. The Volkora fleet dropped out of compressed space at the edge of the New Geneva system. 300 warships hung in the void like a swarm of predatory insects. Their hulls were smooth and organic-looking, grown rather than built, in shades of deep purple and black. Weapons arrays studded their surfaces like thorns on a poisonous plant. High Admiral Zethvorin stood on his bridge and surveyed the system before him. A yellow star, several planets. And there, third from the sun, the prize, New Geneva. A small blue-green world that would soon belong to the Dominion. Begin standard subjugation protocol, he ordered. Disable their orbital defenses. Establish blockade positions. Prepare ground forces for deployment. His fleet moved with practiced precision. They'd done this 1,000 times before. The process was almost boring in its efficiency. The human defense platforms fired first. Small weapons, pitiful weapons, that splashed harmlessly against Velkora's shields. Zethvorn watched with something like amusement as his ships returned fire. One by one, the defense platforms exploded. Debris scattered across orbital space, glittering like jewels in the starlight. Orbital defenses eliminated, Verthen reported. No significant damage to our forces, as expected. Begin orbital bombardment of military targets. Soften them up for ground assault. Plasma rained from the sky. Commander Chun watched from the bunker beneath the garrison as the world above her burned. The display showed feeds from cameras scattered across Haven. Buildings exploded. Streets melted. Fire spread through the parks where children had played just hours ago. The bombardment was precise. The aliens were not trying to destroy the city completely. They wanted to capture it, not annihilate it. But they were destroying every military installation, every defensive position, every place where humans might mount resistance. The garrison above her was gone, vaporized in the first minutes of the attack. She had gotten most of her people into the bunker in time, but not all. 47 soldiers had died in that first strike. 47 people who had trusted her to keep them safe. She pushed the grief aside. There would be time to mourn later. If there was a later, Commander, Torres said. He was standing at the communications console, his face pale. I can't reach Earth. The aliens are jamming all our FTL communications. We're cut off. Chun nodded slowly. She had expected this. Standard invasion tactics. Isolate the target. Prevent them from calling for help. Crush them before anyone knew what had happened. But the Terran Defense Force had planned for this scenario. They had planned for many scenarios. And buried deep. In this bunker was something the aliens did not know about. Something very old. Something that might just save them all. Torres, you have command of surface operations. Do whatever you can to slow them down. I need to go below. Torres looked confused. Below? Commander, there's nothing below this level. Chun almost smiled. That's what we wanted everyone to think. She walked to the back of the bunker, to a wall that looked exactly like every other wall. She pressed her hand against a hidden panel. She pressed her handle. It scanned her palm, her retina, her DNA. Then a section of the wall slid open, revealing a stairway that descended into darkness. Chun took a deep breath and walked. down into the depths. The Velkareth ground forces landed 3 hours after the orbital bombardment ended. Thousands of soldiers in powered armor, supported by hover tanks and walking artillery platforms. They spread out from their landing zones with methodical precision, sweeping through the outskirts of Haven and moving toward the city center. Zethvorn watched their progress from orbit, pleased with how smoothly the operation was proceeding. The humans were fighting back, of course. They always did at first. Small groups of soldiers would emerge from hiding places, fire their weapons, and disappear again. It was irritating, but meaningless. They could not change the outcome. "Report," he commanded. "Ground forces have secured 70% of the urban area," Berthon replied. "Human resistance is sporadic but persistent. We have taken some casualties." "How many?" 412 soldiers killed. Another 200 wounded. Zethvorn's mandibles clicked in surprise. That was more than he had expected. Much more. The human garrison should have been wiped out in the orbital bombardment. Where were these defenders coming from? "Civilians," Berthon explained, as if reading his thoughts. "Our intelligence was incomplete. It appears many of the human colonists have basic military training. They are taking up weapons and joining the defense." "Interesting." Zethvorn leaned forward in his command throne. "So the soft creatures have some fight in them after all." "No matter. Increase the pressure. I want this planet secured by nightfall." What he did not know was that his casualties were not just from trained soldiers or armed civilians. The humans were fighting with a fury that his troops had never encountered before. They did not surrender. They did not retreat unless forced to. And when they were cornered, when capture seemed certain, they did something that horrified the Velkareth soldiers. They chose death rather than submission. Sergeant Major Yuki Tanaka was one of Chun's best soldiers. She was 50 years old, a veteran of border skirmishes and peacekeeping operations. When the aliens surrounded her position in what had been a grocery store, she found herself alone. Her squad was dead. Her ammunition was almost gone. 3 broken ribs made every breath agony. The Velkareth called for her surrender. They wanted prisoners. They wanted information. Tanaka looked at the grenade in her hand. Then she looked at the aliens flooding through the doors. She thought about her home on Earth, about her daughter, who was just starting university, about everything humanity had built among the stars. "Not today," she said quietly. She released the trigger. 40 Velkareth soldiers died with her. The stairway led down for a long time. Chun counted the steps. 200. 300. 400. The air grew cool and dry. Emergency lights flickered on as she passed, illuminating concrete walls that looked decades old. Finally, she reached the bottom. A heavy door stood before her, marked with symbols that had not been used in nearly a century. A stylized earth, a ring of stars, and words in English. Terra Prime Network, authorized personnel only. Chun entered another code. The door groaned open. Inside was a room that looked like it belonged in a museum. Old computers lined the walls, their designs ancient by modern standards. A single console sat in the center, covered in dust that had accumulated over years of neglect. Above the console, a screen displayed a message. Terra Prime transmitter, offline last activation. Never status. Standby. Chun walked to the console and began powering up the system. Lights flickered on. Fans whirred to life. The old machines were still functional, maintained by automated systems that had never needed human intervention. The Terra Prime network was one of humanity's oldest secrets. It dated back to the early days of interstellar colonization, when humans were first venturing out into a galaxy full of unknowns. The founders of the network had understood something important. In an infinite universe, there might be threats that no single colony could face alone. There needed to be a way to call for help. A way that could never be jammed or blocked or intercepted. The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Radio waves. Primitive electromagnetic signals traveling at the speed of light. No FTL technology to disrupt. No quantum encryption to decode. Just raw, basic communication, bouncing from relay station to relay station across human space. It was slow. It would take hours for the signal to reach Earth, but it would reach Earth. Nothing could stop it. Chun sat down at the console. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She knew what sending this message would mean. The Terra Prime Protocol had never been invoked in all of human history. It was the ultimate distress call. The last resort. The signal that told humanity one of its own was facing extinction. And the response to such a signal would be absolute. Above her, she could hear the muffled sounds of explosions. Her soldiers were dying. Her people were dying. The aliens thought they had already won. They were wrong. Chun typed 3 words. SOS. Terra Prime. She pressed the transmit button. Deep beneath the bunker, hidden machinery hummed to life. An antenna array that had been buried underground for nearly a century extended toward the surface, pushing through soil and rock until it reached the sky. And then it began to broadcast. The signal was weak, primitive. The Velkorath would not even notice it among the background radiation of the planet. It would seem like nothing, just noise. But it was not nothing. It was everything. The message raced outward at the speed of light. It hit the first relay station in the asteroid belt of the New Geneva system. That station amplified it and sent it onward. Then another station. And another. A chain of relays spanning hundreds of light years, each one passing the signal along like a torch in the darkness. Toward Earth. Toward home. Toward the answer that would shake the galaxy. By the time night fell on New Geneva, the Velkorath had secured most of the city. Survivors were being rounded up and placed in temporary holding areas. Resistance had died down to scattered pockets, easily contained. High Admiral Zethvoran transported down to the surface to inspect his conquest personally. He walked through the ruined streets of Haven, stepping over debris and bodies without concern. His personal guards surrounded him, weapons ready, but there was no danger. The humans were broken, or so he thought. His senior analyst, Kethri, approached him with a data tablet. Unlike the Admiral, Kethri was a scholar, not a warrior. His armor was lighter, more decorative than functional. But his mind was sharp, and Zethvoran valued his insights. Admiral, I have completed my preliminary analysis of the human defenders. And? Kethri hesitated. There are anomalies. Explain. The humans fought with unexpected ferocity. Our casualty rate was 4 times higher than projected. And the manner of their resistance was unusual. Kethri pulled up images on his tablet. 17 confirmed instances of humans destroying themselves rather than accepting capture. They used explosives, chemical agents, even structural collapse. They took our soldiers with them. Zethvoran's mandibles clicked in displeasure. Suicide tactics. The desperation of a beaten species. Perhaps. But there is something else. Kethri brought up another file. The human home world is classified in our databases as a Category 12 death world. A what? A death world, Admiral. The term refers to planets with environmental conditions so extreme that sentient life should not be able to evolve there. Earth is high gravity by galactic standards. Its atmosphere is rich in a corrosive gas called oxygen. Its surface is covered in predatory animals, toxic plants, and hostile microorganisms. The planet experiences regular seismic events, extreme weather, and periodic extinction-level catastrophes. Zethvoran waved a dismissive hand. And yet, here the humans are. Obviously, the classification is exaggerated. That is what concerns me, Admiral. The classification is not exaggerated. It is accurate. The humans survived all of it. They evolved in conditions that would kill most sentient species within hours. Kethri lowered his voice. We have conquered many worlds, Admiral, but we have never faced a Deathworld species before. We have only encountered their colonists. They're civilians. They're scientists. Your point? Kethri met the Admiral's compound eyes. We've never fought their warriors. Zethvorin laughed. It was a harsh, clicking sound that echoed through the ruined street. Warriors? Look around you, analyst. This is what their warriors achieved. A few hours of futile resistance before we crushed them. The humans are nothing. They will submit like all the others. Kethri did not argue. But as he followed the Admiral through the ruins of Haven, he could not shake the feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. In the bunker far below the city, Commander Chun sat in the dark and watched the transmission log. The signal was still broadcasting, still racing toward Earth. In approximately 43 hours, it would reach the first major relay station near Seoul, and then the humans would answer. Chun thought about Sergeant Major Tanaka, about all the soldiers who had died today, about the civilians in the shelters, praying for rescue that seemed impossible. She thought about the stories her grandmother had told her when she was a child. Stories about the old days, before humanity reached the stars. Stories about wars fought on Earth, about enemies who had underestimated human resolve. The aliens thought they had won. They had no idea what they had started. Chun leaned back in her chair, closed her eyes, and waited. The signal was sent. The call had been made. Now all she could do was survive long enough to see the answer arrive. Somewhere in the darkness of space, carried on waves of ancient light, 3 words traveled toward Earth. SOS. Terra Prime. The Deathworlders were about to wake up. 3 days passed on New Geneva. 3 days of occupation. 3 days of the Velkarth consolidating their control over the small human colony. And 3 days of growing unease among the alien commanders, who had expected a simple conquest. Hi. Admiral Zethvorin sat in the command center he had established. In what had once been the human governor's mansion, the building had survived the orbital bombardment mostly intact, and it served well as a headquarters. Maps covered the walls, showing the planet's geography and the positions of Velkorith forces. Data streams flowed across holographic displays, tracking everything from supply movements to prison accounts. By all measures, the invasion was a complete success. The human military had been destroyed. The civilian population was under control. The planet's resources were being cataloged for extraction. In a few weeks, the first mining operations would begin. In a few months, New Geneva would be just another productive colony in the Dominion's vast empire. And yet, something was wrong. Zethvorin could feel it in the way his officers spoke to him. He could see it in the reports that crossed his desk. The numbers told one story. The reality told another. The door to his office opened, and Kethri entered. The analyst looked tired. His scales had lost some of their luster, and his movements were slower than usual. He had been working constantly since the invasion began, trying to understand the enemy they had conquered. Report, Zethvorin commanded. Kethri approached the Admiral's desk and placed a data tablet before him. The resistance continues, Admiral. Despite our complete military victory, we are still taking casualties. How many? In the past 72 hours, we have lost another 216 soldiers, 43 wounded, 2 armored vehicles destroyed, 1 supply depot sabotaged. Zethvorin's mandibles clicked in irritation. Explain. We control this planet. How are they still fighting? They hide, Kethri said simply. They wait. They strike without warning and disappear before we can respond. They use improvised weapons when they run out of military equipment. They turn ordinary objects into tools of death. We found a Velkareth patrol this morning that had been killed by sharpened pieces of metal attached to wooden handles. Primitive weapons. Effective weapons, Admiral. Our soldiers wear armor designed to stop plasma and kinetic rounds. No one designed it to stop a human swinging a sharpened blade with their full strength. Kethri pulled up images on the display. The human body contains muscles that are far denser than our own. Their bone structure is reinforced to withstand the higher gravity of their home world. In close combat, they are significantly stronger than we anticipated. Zethvorin studied the images. They showed wounds that should not have been possible. Armor plates bent and broken. Soldiers killed by blunt force trauma that had crushed their natural defenses like paper. How is this possible? He demanded. Our intelligence said they were weak, fragile, short-lived. They are short-lived, Kethri agreed. The average human lifespan is less than 100 years. But I believe this is what makes them so dangerous, Admiral. They do not have time to be careful. They do not have time to wait. When they choose to act, they act with complete commitment. They do not think about survival because survival is not their primary concern. Then what is their primary concern? Kethri was quiet for a moment. Victory. Or failing that, defiance. They would rather die fighting than live in submission. It is not a mindset we have encountered before. Zethvorin rose from his chair and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Haven was slowly being rebuilt under Velkareth direction. Crews of human prisoners worked to clear rubble and repair infrastructure. Armed guards watched over them, ready to punish any sign of disobedience. But even as he watched, he could see the humans looking at their captors. There was no fear in their eyes, no broken submission, just cold, patient anger, like predators waiting for the right moment to strike. There is something else, Kethri said. Something that concerns me more than the resistance. Speak. We intercepted a signal during the initial assault. At first, we thought it was nothing. Background radiation. Primitive electromagnetic noise. But I have analyzed it more carefully. Kethri brought up a new display. It was a transmission. Radio waves. The most basic form of communication imaginable. It was directed toward the core of human space. Zethvorin turned to face his analyst. What did it say? We could not decode it. The content was encrypted. But the timing is suspicious. It was sent approximately 3 hours after our invasion began, from somewhere beneath the city. Someone managed to send a message despite our jamming. And you think this matters? Even if they called for help, it would take days for a signal that primitive to reach anyone who could respond. And even then, the humans have no fleet capable of challenging us. We have 300 warships in orbit. They have nothing. Kethri did not argue, but he did not look reassured either. You are correct, Admiral. According to all our intelligence, the humans pose no military threat to the Dominion. Their total fleet numbers approximately 200 vessels, most of them small patrol ships and cargo transports. They have no dreadnoughts, no heavy weapons platforms. They are a peaceful species focused on exploration and colonization. Then, why do you look worried? Because nothing about this invasion has matched our expectations. Kethri met the Admiral's eyes. We expected easy victory. We received unexpected resistance. We expected submission. We received defiance. We expected to understand these creatures. Instead, I find them more confusing with each passing day. He paused. What if our intelligence is wrong about their military capabilities as well? Zethvorin laughed. It was a harsh, dismissive sound. You give them too much credit, analyst. They are not some hidden power waiting to reveal itself. They are a young species that expanded too quickly and spread too thin. They have no hidden fleet, no secret weapons. They are exactly what they appear to be, a minor civilization that made the mistake of settling in Dominion space. He returned to his desk and sat down. Continue monitoring the situation. Crush any resistance. In a week, this will all be forgotten, and New Geneva will be just another colony in our empire. Kethri bowed his head in acknowledgement. As you command, Admiral. But as he left the office, he could not shake the feeling that they were missing something. Something important. Something that would change everything deep beneath the city. In the hidden bunker that the Vel'Kareth had not yet discovered, Commander Lydia Chun was still alive. She was not alone. Over the past 3 days, other survivors had found their way to the bunker. Some were soldiers who had escaped the initial assault. Others were civilians who had stumbled upon the hidden entrance while fleeing the alien patrols. In total, 32 people now sheltered in the underground facility. It was not many. But it was enough. Chun stood before a makeshift map of the city, studying the positions of Vel'Kareth forces. Lieutenant Torres stood beside her, along with a civilian engineer named Maria Santos and a former Special Forces operative named James Walker. They were her command staff now, such as it was. The signal is still transmitting, Torres reported. By my calculations, it should have reached the Proxima relay approximately 6 hours ago. If the relay is still operational, the signal is now on its way to Sol. How long until it reaches Earth? Chun asked. Approximately 39 hours. Then, depending on how quickly command responds, we might see a relief force in, I don't know, days? Weeks? Walker shook his head. He was a large man, heavily muscled, with scars on his face that told stories he never talked about. We don't have weeks. The aliens are getting better at hunting us. They've started using thermal imaging to track our movements. It's only a matter of time before they find this bunker. Then, we make sure they have other things to worry about, Chun replied. Maria, what's the status of the water treatment plant? Santos checked her tablet. Still operational. The aliens haven't bothered to secure it. They're drinking our water, breathing our air, eating our food. They think the planet is safe now. Then we remind them it isn't. Chun pointed to a location on the map. The treatment plant supplies water to the central district, where most of the alien command staff are located. Can you introduce something into the supply? Something that won't harm humans but will make the Vel'Kareth sick? Santos thought for a moment. Their biology is different from ours. Some common Earth bacteria might be harmful to them. I'd need to do some research, but yes, I think it's possible. Do it. Walker, I want you to organize hit-and-run attacks on their supply convoys. Nothing big. Nothing that will draw a major response. Just enough to keep them nervous. Walker nodded. Understood. What about you, Commander? Chun looked at the map for a long moment. I'm going to find out what they're planning. The aliens think they've won. They're getting comfortable. Comfortable enemies make mistakes. She turned to face her small group of survivors. They were tired, hungry, scared, but they were still fighting. Still refusing to surrender. I know this seems hopeless, she said. I know it feels like we're just delaying the inevitable. But I need you to trust me. Help is coming. We sent the call, and Earth will answer. Our job now is to stay alive until they get here. Can you do that? The room was silent for a moment. Then Torres straightened his shoulders and nodded. Yes, Commander. One by one, the others followed. Yes, yes, yes. Chun felt a surge of pride. These were her people. Humanity's people. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched in every way that could be measured. But there was something inside them that could not be measured. something that refused to die. "Then let's get to work," she said. "We've got a war to win." In orbit above New Geneva, the Vel'Kareth fleet maintained its blockade. 300 warships hung in the void, their weapon systems powered down but ready. There was nothing to fight. The conquest was complete. Or so they believed. Commander Thexral was in charge of the orbital security. He was young by Vel'Kareth standards, eager to prove himself, and deeply bored by the assignment. Blockade duty was tedious work. Days of watching empty space, monitoring sensor feeds that never changed, waiting for threats that never came. He was reviewing routine reports when one of his sensor operators called for his attention. "Commander, I'm detecting an anomaly in the outer system." Thexral turned to the operator's station. "What kind of anomaly?" "Uncertain, Commander. There's a small object moving through the asteroid belt. It's not following a natural orbit. It could be a piece of debris from our initial assault, or what?" The operator hesitated. "Or it could be a human probe. The trajectory suggests it was launched from the planet approximately 3 days ago." Thexral considered this. A probe was not a threat. A single small object could not harm the fleet. But it was interesting that the humans had managed to launch anything during the chaos of the invasion. "Track it," he ordered. "If it tries to leave the system, destroy it. Otherwise, let it go. It's probably just some automated research device." "Yes, Commander." Thexral returned to his reports, dismissing the anomaly from his mind. It was nothing. A distraction. The humans were beaten, and nothing they could do would change that fact. He was wrong, of course. The probe was important, but not for the reasons he might have guessed. The probe contained no weapons, no surveillance equipment, no secret technology. It was exactly what it appeared to be, a simple observation device designed to study asteroid composition. But its course had been carefully calculated. It was heading toward a relay station hidden in the asteroid belt. A relay station that was even now receiving a signal from the surface of New Geneva and preparing to send it onward. The message was already on its way to Earth, and when it arrived, the galaxy would learn what humanity was truly capable of. On the surface of New Geneva, the occupation continued. Vel'Kareth soldiers patrolled the streets of Haven, enforcing curfews and processing prisoners. Work crews labored to repair the damage caused by the invasion. Supply ships landed regularly, bringing equipment and reinforcements. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Everything was under control. And then, people started getting sick. It began in the command district, where the senior officers were housed. Soldiers complained of stomach cramps and fever. Some collapsed during patrol duty. Others were confined to their quarters, too weak to stand. High Admiral Zethvoran summoned his medical officers and demanded answers. "It appears to be a bacterial infection," the chief medical officer reported. "Something in the water supply. We are not sure how it was introduced, but it is spreading rapidly among our forces. Can you treat it?" "We are working on a cure, Admiral. But our biology is not equipped to handle these particular organisms. They seem to be native to this planet, harmless to humans, but highly toxic to Vel'Kareth physiology." Zethvoran's mandibles clicked with rage. "This is sabotage. The humans did this." "Almost certainly, Admiral. But we cannot determine how. All water processing facilities are under our control. All food supplies are monitored. Someone managed to contaminate our resources without being detected. Find them. Find whoever did this and execute them publicly. Make an example." The medical officer bowed and withdrew. But the sickness continued to spread. Within 2 days, nearly a quarter of the Vel'Kareth ground forces were affected. Combat effectiveness dropped significantly. Patrol schedules were reduced. Security weakened. And in the shadows of Haven, The human resistance grew bolder. Catherine found the Admiral in his office, staring at reports that told a story of slow decay. Casualties from resistance attacks were up. Productivity among the human workforce was down. Mysterious equipment failures plagued the occupation forces. And now the sickness. "You were right," Deathworlders said quietly. He did not look up as Catherine entered. "I underestimated them." Catherine said nothing. There was nothing to say. "They are not like the others," the Admiral continued. "The species we have conquered before. They broke when we showed them our strength. They submitted. They accepted their place in the Dominion. But these humans," he shook his head, "they refuse to understand that they have lost. They keep fighting even when fighting is pointless. They keep resisting even when resistance is futile." "Perhaps," Catherine said carefully, "they do not believe resistance is futile." "What do you mean?" "The signal, Admiral. The message they sent. What if they are waiting for something? What if they believe help is coming?" Deathworlders laughed bitterly. "Help from where? We have studied their species for decades. They have no fleet capable of threatening us. No allies who would risk war with the Dominion. No one is coming to save them. Perhaps. Or perhaps there are things about humanity that we do not know. Things they have hidden from the galaxy." The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city that was supposed to be his triumph. "Order all ships to maintain high alert," he said finally. "Increase patrols in the outer system. If anything approaches New Geneva, I want to know about it immediately. Do you expect an attack?" Deathworlders turned to face his analyst. In the dim light of the office, his compound eyes glittered with something that might have been doubt. "I do not know what to expect anymore," he admitted. "But I am beginning to think we should have left this world alone." Far away, in the darkness of space, the signal continued its journey. It had passed through relay after relay, each one boosting it and sending it onward. Now, it was racing through the final stretch, approaching the Sol system at the speed of light. In 12 hours, it would reach Earth. In 12 hours, humanity would learn that one of its colonies had been attacked, that its people were being held captive, that an alien fleet was occupying its territory. And in 12 hours, the universe would discover what happened when you threatened the children of a death world. The Velkar thought they understood conquest. They thought they understood war. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the bunker beneath Haven, Commander Chun monitored her resistance operations and counted down the hours. 36 hours since transmission. 12 hours until Earth received the message. Then response time. Preparation time. Travel time. It could be days before help arrived. It could be weeks. But it would arrive. She was certain of that, because humanity never abandoned its own. Not ever. Not anywhere. She looked at the transmission log one more time, reading the 3 words that had been sent into the void. SOS. Terra Prime. "They're coming," she whispered to herself. "Hold on just a little longer. They're coming." Above her, the alien fleet orbited in complacent victory. They had no idea that doom was approaching. They had no idea that they had awoken something they could not stop. They had no idea that the Deathworlders had heard the call. And the Deathworlders were answering. The message reached Earth on a Tuesday afternoon deep beneath the Swiss Alps. In a facility that officially did not exist, banks of ancient receivers sat in perfect silence. They had been waiting for over a century, monitoring frequencies that no one else used anymore, listening for a signal that everyone hoped would never come. When the signal arrived, it triggered alarms that had not sounded in generations. Technician First Class Elena Rodriguez was on duty when it happened. She was young, barely 25, and she had taken this assignment because it was quiet, easy, a job where nothing ever happened. The alarm nearly gave her a heart attack. She stared at her console in disbelief as data scrolled across the screen. A signal had arrived. An authenticated signal. From the Terra Prime network. From a colony called New Geneva.3words.sos. Terra Prime. Rodriguez's hands trembled as she reached for the emergency communicator. This was not a drill. This was not a test. This was real. Control, this is Station 7. We have a Terra Prime signal. Repeat, we have a Terra Prime signal. Authentication confirmed. This is not a drill. The response was immediate. Within minutes, the bunker was flooded with senior officers. Within hours, the information had reached the highest levels of the United Terran Federation government. And within the day, it reached the one man who had the authority to respond. Admiral Marcus Stone was 63 years old. His hair was gray, his face was weathered, and his eyes held the weight of decades of service. He had fought in the border wars. He had commanded the defense of Proxima Station. He had buried more soldiers than he cared to remember. He had also spent the last 20 years hoping he would never receive the call that had just arrived on his desk. The war room beneath. Geneva was crowded with military brass and government officials. Holographic displays showed maps of human space, with New Geneva highlighted in angry red. Data feeds scrolled across the walls, showing everything they knew about the situation. It was not much. 300 alien warships, reported Fleet Intelligence Director Sarah Chun. No relation to the commander fighting on New Geneva, though she wished there was. Based on the signal intercepts we've been able to decrypt, they belong to something called the Velkareth Dominion, a major power in the Orion Spur. 17 client species. Thousands of years of conquest under their belt. Casualties? Stone asked. Unknown. The colony had a population of 200,000. We have to assume significant losses. The signal was sent 3 days ago. A lot can happen in 3 days. Stone studied the holographic display. New Geneva was far from Earth, far from any significant military presence. The nearest patrol squadron was weeks away at standard FTL speeds. Options, he said. We have 3, Chun replied. First, we do nothing. We accept the loss and hope the Dominion doesn't decide to push further into our territory. Second, we send what ships we have available. Approximately 40 vessels could reach New Geneva within 2 weeks. They would be heavily outgunned, but they might be able to negotiate a withdrawal. And the third option? The room went quiet. Everyone knew what the third option was. They had all trained for it, planned for it, hoped they would never need it. Chung took a deep breath. We invoke Terra Prime Protocol. Full response. Stone was silent for a long moment. He turned away from the displays and walked to the window that looked out on the underground command center. Hundreds of people worked at stations below, monitoring humanity's interests across 47 star systems. They were a peaceful species by choice. They had seen enough war in their history, enough blood, enough death. When they reached the stars, they had decided to be different, to be explorers instead of conquerors, to seek friendship instead of dominance. But they had never been foolish. They had never forgotten what they were capable of. The 8th Fleet, Stone said quietly. Yes, Admiral. The 8th Fleet. Stone closed his eyes. He remembered the day he had been briefed on the 8th Fleet's existence. He had been a young captain then, full of idealism and hope. Learning that humanity had built such a thing had shaken him to his core, but he had understood why. In a galaxy full of unknowns, you prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Wake them up, he said. The orders went out through secure channels that existed outside normal military communications. They traveled to places that appeared on no maps. Facilities hidden in asteroid belts. Bases buried beneath dead moons. Shipyards carved into the hearts of wandering rocks dotted these hidden places. Lights began to flicker on. Systems that had been dormant for decades powered up. Automated maintenance protocols gave way to active operation modes, and cryopods began to open. Captain David Chun, son of the commander fighting on New Geneva, though he did not know that yet, woke to the sound of alarms. His body was cold. His muscles ached. His mind was foggy from years of artificial sleep, but the alarm cut through the confusion like a knife. He knew that sound. Every member of the 8th Fleet knew that sound. It was the call to war. He pulled himself from the cryopod and stumbled to his feet. Around him, hundreds of other pods were opening. Men and women emerged, shaking off the effects of long sleep, their faces grim and determined. A young officer approached him with a tablet. "Captain Chun, sir. We have orders from Fleet Command." Chun took the tablet and read the message. It was brief. It was devastating. Terra Prime Protocol activated colony New Geneva under attack. Hostile forces. 300+ vessels. Velkareth Dominion 8th Fleet ordered to respond with full force. Nitrogen monoxide Aristiorecit looked up from the tablet. Through the window of the awakening facility, he could see the ship he commanded. The TN's Vengeance. A battlecruiser designed for one purpose: to destroy enemies of humanity. "How long until we're ready to move?" he asked. 48 hours, sir. All ships are powering up. Crews are being revived. Weapon systems are being brought online. Make it 36. And get me a line to the Wrath of Terra. I want to speak with Admiral Stone. The 8th Fleet was humanity's darkest secret, and its greatest hope. It had been built over the course of a century. Hidden from the galaxy, never used, always waiting. The ships were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were not designed to impress or intimidate. They were designed to kill. 17 dreadnoughts formed the core of the fleet. Each one was over 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that had never been fired in anger. Their hulls were thick with armor. Their engines were powerful enough to move small moons. They carried enough firepower to destroy civilizations. 40-2 battlecruisers supported the dreadnoughts. Smaller, faster, but no less deadly. They were hunters, designed to chase down and eliminate enemy vessels with ruthless efficiency. 200 support vessels completed the fleet. Carriers loaded with fighter craft. Supply ships filled with ammunition and spare parts. Medical vessels prepared to handle casualties. Electronic warfare platforms capable of blinding entire star systems. And at the center of it all, the flagship, the TNS Wrath of Terra. It was not the largest ship humanity had ever built, but it was the most powerful. Its main weapon was something that had been theorized about for centuries, but never successfully created: a gravitational compression cannon. A device that could focus the force of gravity itself into a beam of unimaginable destruction. The Wrath of Terra was the hammer of humanity. The final argument. The weapon that would be used only when all other options had failed. And now it was being awakened. Admiral Stone arrived at the hidden shipyard 3 days after the Terra Prime signal was received. He had traveled on a fast courier ship, pushing the engines to their limits, because he needed to be here. He needed to see this with his own eyes. The shipyard was hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. From the outside, it looked like nothing. Just another cluster of rocks drifting through space. But inside those rocks was the largest military installation humanity had ever constructed. Stone's shuttle approached the main docking bay, and for the first time, he saw the 8th Fleet assembled. It took his breath away. The ships hung in formation, their running lights creating a constellation of deadly purpose. Dreadnoughts and battlecruisers and support vessels, all waiting for the order to move. And at the center, The Wrath of Terra, its dark hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. He had known these ships existed. He had reviewed their specifications. He had approved their maintenance budgets. But seeing them assembled, ready for war, was something else entirely. "Magnificent, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Stone turned to see Fleet Admiral Catherine Wong, the overall commander of the 8th Fleet. She was older than he was, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen things most humans could not imagine. She had been one of the first volunteers for the 8th Fleet, giving up a normal life to waiting cold sleep for a war that might never come. "Catherine," Stone said, "it's good to see you awake. I wish the circumstances were different." Wong moved to stand beside him, looking out at the assembled fleet. 300 Velkarith ships, they say. I've been reading the intelligence reports. They sound confident. They are. They've ruled their section of the galaxy for 12,000 years. They've never been defeated. Wong smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Neither have we. The briefing took place aboard the Wrath of Terra. Senior commanders from across the fleet gathered in the main conference room, their faces displaying various stages of readiness. Some had been awake for days, preparing their ships. Others had just emerged from cryosleep hours ago. Stone stood at the head of the table, a holographic display of the New Geneva system floating before him. 3 days ago, the colony of New Geneva was attacked by a fleet belonging to the Velkareth Dominion. 200,000 human civilians are currently under alien occupation. We have received the Terra Prime distress signal, and we are going to respond. He gestured at the display. The enemy fleet consists of approximately 300 warships. Based on our intelligence, they are technologically advanced, but have never faced a serious military challenge. They expect no resistance. Captain David Chun spoke up. What's the status of the colony? Are there survivors? Stone met the younger man's eyes. He had not told Chun about his mother yet. That would come later, when there was time for personal matters. We believe there are survivors. The signal was sent from a hidden bunker beneath the capital city. As long as the bunker remains undiscovered, the colonists have a chance. Then we need to move fast, said another commander. Every hour we delay is another hour the enemy has to find them. Stone nodded. Agreed. The 8th Fleet will depart in 12 hours. Maximum FTL speed. We will arrive at New Geneva in approximately 72 hours. And when we get there? Wong asked. Stone's face hardened. We will offer them one chance to surrender. One. If they refuse, we will destroy them. Completely. Without mercy. Without hesitation. The room was silent for a moment. Then Wong spoke, her voice cold and steady. That sounds like the response they deserve. There's more, Stone continued. This is not just about rescuing New Geneva. This is about sending a message. The Velkarth and every other species in this galaxy need to understand something fundamental about humanity. We do not conquer. We do not enslave. We ask only to be left in peace. But if you attack our people, any of them, anywhere, we will come for you. Not with proportional response. Not with measured retaliation. With everything we have. He looked around the table at the commanders of the most powerful fleet ever assembled. We are about to show the galaxy what a Deathworld species looks like when it stops pretending to be civilized. Make sure your crews understand. This is not a rescue mission. This is an announcement. This is humanity telling the universe exactly who and what we are. Wong raised an eyebrow. And what are we, Admiral? Stone's voice dropped to something between a growl and a prayer. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We are the descendants of creatures that fought for survival against predators, diseases, disasters, and each other. We did not reach the stars because we were lucky. We reached them because nothing could stop us." He paused, his eyes sweeping across the assembled commanders. "The Volcareth think they are conquerors. They think they understand war. They have conquered hundreds of species who evolved on comfortable worlds with mild climates and gentle conditions. They have never faced a species that was forged in fire, a species that carries violence in its very DNA, a species that has been fighting for survival since before it learned to speak." He straightened his shoulders. "In 72 hours, they will learn, and they will never forget." 12 hours later, the 8th Fleet moved. The departure was not dramatic. There were no crowds to watch, no fanfare or ceremony. Just 17 dreadnoughts, 42 battlecruisers, and 200 support vessels gliding out of hidden shipyards and forming up in the darkness between planets. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the Wrath of Terra and watched as his fleet assembled. Each ship reported ready. Each captain confirmed their orders. The formation was perfect. "Fleet status?" he asked. "All ships report ready for FTL transit," replied his executive officer. "Coordinates for New Geneva have been loaded. Jump drives are powered and standing by." Stone took a deep breath. This was the moment, the point of no return. Once they jumped, there was no going back. They would arrive at New Geneva, and they would fight. Whatever happened next would change the course of human history. "Open a channel to all ships." "Channel open." "Admiral." Stone's voice carried across the fleet, reaching every bridge, every station, every crew member who had given up their peaceful lives to wait for this moment. "This is Admiral Stone. In a few moments, we will jump to the New Geneva system. Many of you have been waiting years for this day. Some of you have been waiting decades. You volunteered for the 8th Fleet because you understood that humanity needed guardians, protectors who would stand ready while others lived in peace." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Today, your waiting ends. Today, we go to war. Not because we want to, not because we enjoy violence, but because our people are in danger and we will not abandon them. We will fight for them. We will die for them if necessary. And we will make our enemies regret the day they ever heard the name of humanity." He looked out at the assembled fleet one more time. "All ships, engage jump drives. Let's bring our people home." Space rippled, reality bent, and one by one, the ships of the 8th Fleet vanished into the void, racing toward New Geneva at speeds that defied comprehension. The Deathworlders were on their way, and the galaxy was about to learn the true meaning of fear. Far away, on New Geneva, Commander Lydia Chun was leading another sabotage mission when she felt something. A strange sensation in her chest. A flutter of hope that she could not explain. She paused in the darkness of a ruined building, looking up at the sky. The alien ships were still there, orbiting above, confident in their victory. But something was coming. She could feel it. "Commander?" Torres whispered. "Are you all right?" Chun smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had worn in days. "I'm fine, Lieutenant. Just thinking about home." She did not know that her son was commanding one of the ships racing toward her. She did not know that help was less than 72 hours away. She did not know that the largest human fleet ever assembled was coming to save her colony. But she knew something was happening. Somewhere out there in the darkness of space, humanity was responding to her call. "Come on," she said. "We have work to do. Let's make sure we're still alive when the cavalry arrives." And in the depths of space, getting closer with every passing second, the 8th Fleet hurtled toward its destiny. The Wrath of Terra led the way. The hammer was falling. High Admiral Zethform was losing patience. A week had passed since the invasion of New Geneva, and what should have been a simple occupation had become a nightmare. The sickness was spreading despite their best efforts. Sabotage incidents were increasing. 3 more patrols had been ambushed in the past 2 days. And worst of all, he still could not find the source of the resistance. He stood in his command center, staring at reports that made no sense. The humans should have been broken by now. They had no military, no resources, no hope. And yet they continued to fight. Admiral. Catherine approached with another tablet. The analyst looked even more exhausted than before. I have completed my analysis of the resistance operations. And they are being coordinated. Someone is organizing the attacks, choosing targets, timing the strikes for maximum effect. There is a command structure hidden somewhere that we have not discovered. Zethvorin slammed his fist on the table. Then find it. I have 30,000 soldiers on this planet. How hard can it be to find a handful of human rebels? The problem, Admiral, is that the humans do not think like us. They do not operate in the ways we expect. They hide in places we would not think to look. They use methods we do not anticipate. Catherine hesitated. They are very good at this. Too good. As if they have been fighting wars like this for a very long time. What are you saying? I have been studying human history, Admiral. In detail. What I have found is disturbing. Catherine brought up images on his tablet. The humans have been fighting wars among themselves for their entire existence. Thousands of wars. Millions of wars. They have developed techniques for resistance and insurgency that are incredibly sophisticated. They call it guerrilla warfare, asymmetric combat. They have been refining these methods for centuries. Zethvorin studied the images. They showed human historical records, battles fought on their homeworld, conflicts that seemed primitive but surprisingly effective. Small groups of fighters taking on larger forces and winning through cunning and determination. So they are experienced at being conquered, he said dismissively. That does not make them dangerous. With respect, Admiral, you are missing the point. They are not experienced at being conquered. They are experienced at fighting against conquerors. And they are very, very good at it. Catherine lowered his voice. The humans have a saying. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I believe we should learn from their history before it is too late. Zethvorin was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout the command center. What is happening? He demanded. An officer at a sensor station turned to face him, her face pale with shock. Admiral, we are detecting massive subspace distortions in the outer system. Something is coming? Something? What kind of something? I do not know, Admiral. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. But whatever it is big. Very big. Zethvorin strode to the sensor station and looked at the display. The officer was right. The readings were strange. Multiple distortions, growing larger by the second. As if space itself was being torn apart. It could be a natural phenomenon, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. It is not natural, Catherine said quietly. Admiral, I believe the humans called for help. And I believe help has arrived. Before Zethvorin could respond, the distortions peaked. Space rippled like water disturbed by stones. And then ships began emerging from the chaos. Not small ships. Not patrol vessels or merchant craft. Monsters. The Eighth Fleet dropped out of FTL space with the precision of a species that had been practicing for exactly this moment. 17 dreadnoughts materialized in perfect formation, their massive hulls eclipsing the stars behind them. 42 battlecruisers took up flanking positions, weapons already powered and tracking targets. 200 support vessels spread out in a protective shell, ready to fulfill their various roles in the battle to come. And at the center of the formation, The TNS Wrath of Terra emerged like a god of war stepping onto a battlefield. The ship was enormous. Over 5 kilometers long, its angular black hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It bristled with weapons platforms that had never been fired in anger. Its engines glowed with barely contained power. And deep in its heart, the gravitational compression cannon hummed with anticipation. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge and watched as his tactical display populated with enemy contacts. 300 Vel'Korath warships, exactly as intelligence had reported. They were arranged in a standard blockade formation, completely unprepared for what had just arrived. "Status report," he commanded. "All ships have completed transit successfully," his executive officer reported. "Weapons systems are online. Shields are at full power. Fighter squadrons are launching. Enemy response? Confused, Admiral. They are breaking formation and attempting to regroup. I do not think they expected us." Stone allowed himself a grim smile. "No, I don't suppose they did." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel. All frequencies. I want them to hear this. Channel open, Admiral." Stone straightened his uniform and spoke. His voice was carried across space on every frequency, overriding Vel'Korath communications with contemptuous ease. "This is Admiral Marcus Stone of the United Terran Federation, 8th Fleet. You have attacked human civilians on sovereign human territory. You have 47 seconds to begin unconditional surrender procedures. If you do not comply, you will be destroyed." There was silence for a moment. Then a response came through, harsh and defiant. "Human vessel, this is High Admiral Zethvorin of the Vel'Korath Dominion. You are outnumbered and outmatched. Surrender your fleet immediately, or we will annihilate you." Stone actually laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "High Admiral, I offered you a chance to surrender out of courtesy. I did not expect you to take it. But I wanted you to know that the offer was made. I wanted your crew to know that they could have lived." He paused. "That offer is now rescinded. All ships, weapons free." The Vel'Korath had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their technology was advanced. Their tactics were refined. Their commanders were experienced. None of that mattered. The human fleet attacked with a savagery that the Vel'Korath could not comprehend. There was no elegant maneuvering, no cautious probing. The humans came at them like a force of nature, a hurricane of fire and death that cared nothing for the odds against it. The dreadnoughts opened fire first. Their main batteries unleashed volleys of accelerated tungsten rounds that crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. Each round was moving at a fraction of the speed of light. Each impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear explosion. Vel'Korath ships began dying almost immediately. "All ships return fire," Zethvorin screamed. "Concentrate on the lead vessel. Destroy their flagship." 300 warships turned their weapons on the Wrath of Terra. Plasma beams and particle weapons and missiles filled the space between the fleets. It was the most concentrated firepower the Vel'Korath had ever brought to bear against a single target. The Wrath of Terra did not even slow down. Its shields absorbed the incoming fire with ease. Energy that would have destroyed continents dissipated harmlessly against barriers, designed by a species that knew how to survive against impossible odds. The ship continued its advance, ignoring the enemy attacks as if they were nothing more than gentle rain. "How is this possible?" Zethvorin demanded. "Our weapons are having no effect." Kethri was at a sensor station, his face a mask of horrified fascination. "Their technology, Admiral. It is not just advanced. It is designed for war in ways ours is not. We build ships to be efficient, to be economical. They built ships to survive anything. Prepare for close combat," Zethvorin ordered. "If we cannot destroy them at range, We will tear them apart in close quarters. It was a reasonable strategy. The Vel'Kareth were experienced in ship-to-ship combat. Their boarding parties were among the finest in the galaxy. If they could get close enough, they could use their numbers to overwhelm the human vessels. They never got the chance. The Wrath of Terra fired its main weapon. The gravitational compression cannon had never been used in actual combat. It had been tested extensively, of course, in isolated systems far from prying eyes. The scientists who built it knew what it could do. The commanders who would use it knew as well. But knowing something and seeing it were very different things. The weapon created a focused beam of gravitational force, not a physical projectile, not an energy burst, pure gravity, concentrated into a lance of impossible destruction. When it struck a target, it did not explode. It compressed. It crushed. It reduced matter to its most fundamental components through sheer gravitational pressure. Zethvarin watched in horror as 47 of his ships simply ceased to exist. There was no warning. No time to react. One moment, 47 warships were moving into attack formation. The next moment, they were gone. Collapsed into points of impossibly dense matter that quickly evaporated, leaving nothing behind but empty space. By the ancestors, Kethri whispered. They weaponized gravity itself. All ships, break formation. Zethvarin screamed. Scatter. Do not let them target us in groups. But it was already too late. The human fleet was among them now, and the slaughter had truly begun. Captain David Chen guided the Vengeance through the chaos of battle with cold precision. Enemy ships were everywhere, that they were confused, disorganized, trying desperately to escape rather than fight. Target the ship at bearing 275, he ordered. Full broadside. The Vengeance's weapons batteries roared. Railguns fired tungsten rounds at hypersonic velocities. Missile pods launched to swarms of antimatter warheads. Point defense systems shot down incoming fire with mechanical efficiency. The enemy ship tried to evade. It was not fast enough. The broadside caught it amidships, tearing through shields and armor as if they were paper. The ship broke apart in a shower of debris and escaping atmosphere. Target destroyed, his weapons officer reported. Acquiring next target. Chun watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. It was a massacre. The Vel'Kareth fleet was being dismantled piece by piece. For every human ship that took damage, a dozen enemy vessels were destroyed. The technological gap was immense. The humans were not just winning. They were dominating, but Chun took no pleasure in the killing. Each ship that died was full of living beings. Enemies, yes. Invaders who had attacked his people. But still living beings who were dying by the thousands because their leaders had made a terrible mistake. Sir, his communications officer said, we're receiving a distress signal from the planet's surface. Human origin. They're asking for help. Chun felt his heart skip a beat. The colonists. The people they had come to save. They were still alive. Can you identify the source? It's coming from beneath the capital city. Coordinates suggest an underground facility of some kind. Chun nodded slowly. Someone was down there. Someone who had survived the invasion and was waiting for rescue. Inform Admiral Stone, he ordered, and prepare landing parties. As soon as we've dealt with the enemy fleet, we're going down there. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes of concentrated violence that redefined what the galaxy understood about warfare. 11 minutes in which 300 Vel'Kareth warships were reduced to scattered debris and expanding clouds of gas. Admiral Stone watched the final moments from the bridge of the Wrath of Terra. The last enemy ships were trying to flee, their engines pushing them toward the edge of the system. Desperate to escape the nightmare that had descended upon them, he could have let them go. The battle was won. The colony was saved. Mercy would have cost him nothing, but this was not about mercy. This was about sending a message. All ships, pursue and destroy. No survivors. The order was carried out with ruthless efficiency. Human vessels ran down the fleeing enemy craft and destroyed them one by one. No quarter was offered. No surrenders were accepted. The Vel'Korath had come to this system as conquerors. They would leave it as nothing. When it was over, Stone stood in silence for a long moment. The tactical display showed nothing but debris where an enemy fleet had once been. 300 warships, tens of thousands of enemy soldiers, gone. Admiral, his executive officer said quietly, "The enemy flagship is still intact. Barely. They're requesting communication." Stone considered this. Then he nodded. "Put them through." The holographic display flickered, and the image of High Admiral Zethvorin appeared. The alien commander looked broken. His compound eyes were dim. His mandibles hung slack. The bridge behind him was in ruins, sparking with electrical fires and littered with dead crew members. You have won," Zethvorin said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "What are you?" Stone met the alien's eyes. "We are human. We are the children of Earth. We are the descendants of creatures that survived everything the universe could throw at them. We are what happens when a Deathworld species decides to reach for the stars." He paused. "You attacked our people, our civilians, our innocents. You thought we were weak because we chose peace. You thought we were prey because we did not show you our weapons." His voice hardened. "You were wrong." Zethvorin lowered his head. "I understand." "Finish it." Stone nodded to his weapons officer. A single shot from the Wrath of Terra's secondary batteries struck the Vel'Korath flagship. The ship exploded in a flash of light that briefly outshone the local sun dot, and then there was silence. On the surface of New Geneva, the alien occupation forces were in chaos. They had watched their fleet die. They had seen the impossible become real. And now they were trapped on a hostile world with no hope of rescue or escape. Some tried to fight. They were destroyed by orbital bombardment from the human fleet above. Some tried to hide. They were hunted down by human marines who descended from the sky in dropships and landing craft. Some tried to surrender. They were accepted, their weapons taken, their dignity preserved. Humans were not monsters. They did not kill those who genuinely sought peace. But most of the occupation forces simply waited to die. They had seen what human technology could do. They had watched an entire fleet annihilated in minutes. They understood that resistance was truly futile now. Commander Lydia Chen emerged from her bunker to find a sky full of human dropships. Marines in powered armor were securing the city. Medical teams were setting up triage stations. Engineers were already working to restore power and water. She stood in the ruins of Haven and watched as her people were saved. "Commander Chen?" A voice came from behind her. She turned to see a young captain in marine armor approaching her. His face was familiar somehow. His eyes, especially. She had seen those eyes before. "I'm Captain David Chen," he said. "8th Fleet Marine Detachment. We received your signal." Lydia stared at him for a long moment. Then understanding dawned. "David? Little David?" The captain smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "Mom always said I'd grow into my years eventually." I'm not sure she was right. Lydia laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. Then she was crying and hugging her son and laughing and crying at the same time. "You came," she said. "You actually came. Of course we came." David held his mother tight. "We're human. It's what we do." Admiral Stone transported down to the surface later that day. He wanted to see the colony for himself. He wanted to meet the people his fleet had saved. What he found was a world in ruins. Buildings destroyed. Infrastructure shattered. Thousands dead. But also thousands alive. Survivors emerging from shelters and hiding places, looking up at the sky with wonder and relief. He found Commander Chun at the Central Hospital, helping coordinate medical efforts. She was exhausted, covered in dirt and dried blood, but her eyes were bright with determination. "Commander," Stone said, approaching her. "I'm Admiral Stone. I believe we have you to thank for the signal." Chun straightened and saluted. "Just doing my job, Admiral. Anyone would have done the same." "Maybe, but you're the one who did it." Stone looked around at the hospital, at the wounded being treated, at the doctors and nurses working without rest. "You held them. Against impossible odds, you held them." "We're human," Chun said simply. "It's what we do." Stone nodded slowly. It was the same thing her son had said. Maybe it was true. Maybe that was the secret of humanity's survival. Not their technology or their weapons or their numbers. Just their stubborn, impossible refusal to give up. "The galaxy is going to know about this," Stone said. "Word will spread about what happened here. Every species in the Orion Spur will learn what we did." "Is that a good thing?" Stone considered the question. "I think so. They need to understand who we are, what we're capable of. Not so they'll fear us, but so they'll think twice before trying this again." He looked up at the sky, where the ships of the 8th Fleet were visible as points of light against the stars. "We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in peace. But if peace isn't an option, if someone forces us to fight, we will fight with everything we have. And we will win." Chun followed his gaze. "Do you think they'll understand that? The other species out there?" Stone smiled. It was a tired, weathered smile, but there was hope in it. "After today, I think they will. I think the message has been delivered." The message was simple. It was the same message humanity had been sending since the first human picked up a rock and used it to defend their family. Don't start what you can't finish. And humanity always finished. In the museum at the center of Haven, there was a new exhibit. It was a simple display. A small transmitter, old and weathered, sitting on a pedestal. Above it, a plaque explained its significance. This device was used to send the Terra Prime signal on the night of March 15th, 2387. 3 words transmitted across the stars, calling for help that seemed impossible. Those 3 words summoned the 8th Fleet and saved 200,000 lives. Below the explanation, the 3 words were displayed in gold letters. SOS, Terra Prime, and below that, in smaller text, "We do not start wars. We finish them." Visitors came from across human space to see the exhibit. Colonists, soldiers, children on school trips. They stood before the transmitter and thought about what it meant, what it had cost, what it had achieved. Some left feeling proud. Some left feeling humbled. Some left feeling afraid. But all of them left understanding something fundamental about what it meant to be human. That humanity was capable of terrible violence, but chose peace. That humanity could destroy civilizations, but preferred to build them. That humanity carried the weapons of war, but hoped never to use them. The Terra Prime network had been designed for the worst day in human history. The day when everything failed, when all other options were exhausted, when only one choice remained. That day had come to New Geneva, and humanity had answered. Now the network remained active, its relay stations scattered across human space, waiting, listening, ready. The 8th Fleet had returned to its hidden bases after the battle. The crews had gone back into cryosleep, returning to their long wait for a call that might never come again. The ships sat in darkness, their weapons powered down, their reactors silent. But they were there. They would always be there. Because humanity had learned long ago that the price of peace was eternal vigilance, that the best way to avoid war was to be prepared for it. That strength was meaningless unless you were willing to use it. The galaxy knew now. Every species, from the proudest empire to the humblest colony, understood the truth about humanity. They were the children of a death world. They were survivors by nature and warriors by necessity. They had fought their way up from the mud of a hostile planet to claim their place among the stars. And they would not surrender that place to anyone. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. The signal beacon on New Geneva went dark, its work complete. But its message echoed across the galaxy, carried in stories and legends and warnings passed from species to species. 3 words. 3 simple words that had changed everything. SOS. Terra Prime. The Deathworlders had answered. And the galaxy would never forget. In exchange, you agree not to pursue further military action against the Dominion. You agree to maintain peaceful relations. And you agree to... Vethkar hesitated. You agree to leave us alone. Stone looked at the Velkareth ambassador for a long moment. He saw fear in those compound eyes. Real fear. The kind of fear that came from confronting something truly unknown and dangerous. Good, he thought. Fear was the beginning of wisdom. I'll need to discuss this with my superiors, Stone said finally. But I think we can come to an agreement. Vethkar's mandibles relaxed slightly. Relief. There is one more thing, Stone added. A condition that is not negotiable. Name it. You will spread the word throughout the Dominion and to every other species you have contact with. You will tell them what happened here. You will tell them what we are capable of. And you will tell them this. Humanity asks only to live in peace. We do not want to conquer anyone. We do not want to rule the galaxy. But if anyone attacks our people, any of them, anywhere, for any reason, we will come for them. Not with proportional response. Not with measured retaliation. With everything we have. Stone stood up, his eyes locked on the Velkareth ambassador. Make sure they understand. Make sure everyone understands. We did not build the 8th Fleet because we wanted war. We built it to prevent war. Because the best way to prevent war is to make sure your enemies know they cannot win. Vethkar nodded slowly. I understand, Admiral. The message will be delivered. Good. Stone extended his hand. A human gesture of agreement that the Velkareth had learned during their studies. Then, I think we have the beginning of peace. Vethkar took the hand carefully, conscious of the strength in the human's grip. Peace, he agreed. For both our peoples. The Treaty of New Geneva was signed 1 month later. It was the first formal diplomatic agreement between humanity and a major galactic power. Its terms were exactly as Vethkar had offered. Recognition of human sovereignty, reparations, release of prisoners, and a commitment to peaceful coexistence. But the treaty itself was almost secondary to its impact on the rest of the galaxy. Word spread, just as Stone had demanded. The story of New Geneva traveled from system to system, from species to species, growing in the telling until it had become something almost legendary. The small human colony that had resisted an alien occupation. The hidden fleet that had emerged from nowhere to rescue them. The terrifying weapons that had destroyed 300 warships in minutes. And the lesson. The simple, undeniable lesson that no species could ignore. Do not attack humanity. The effect was immediate and profound. Trade delegations began arriving at human space stations, seeking to establish diplomatic relations. Scientific exchanges were proposed. Cultural programs were initiated. Species that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly found reasons to be friendly, that it was not just fear that motivated them. The humans had shown something more than just military power. They had shown restraint. They had offered surrender before attacking. They had accepted prisoners rather than slaughtering them. They had sought peace rather than conquest, a species that powerful could have easily decided to dominate the galaxy. The humans had chosen not to. That choice spoke louder than any weapon. 6 months after the battle, New Geneva was well on its way to recovery. The city of Haven had been rebuilt, larger and stronger than before. New defense systems had been installed, both on the surface and in orbit. The population had grown as refugees returned and new colonists arrived, drawn by the planet's new status as a symbol of human resilience. Commander Lydia Chun stood on the balcony of her new apartment, watching the sun set over the western mountains. The view was almost the same as it had been before the invasion. Almost. "You look thoughtful." She turned to see her son standing in the doorway. Captain David Chun had been assigned to the New Geneva garrison, partly to help with reconstruction and partly because he had wanted to stay close to his mother after everything that had happened. "Just thinking about how much has changed," Lydia said. 6 months ago, I was counting down the days until retirement. Now I'm overseeing the construction of a fortress. David joined her on the balcony. "The galaxy knows about us now. That changes things. Does it scare you? That they know what we can do?" David considered the question. "A little," he admitted. "But I think it's better this way. Secrets have a way of coming out eventually. At least now everyone knows where they stand." And where do they stand? Where they've always stood. With us or against us. And if they're smart, they'll choose the first option. Lydia smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. "When did you become so wise?" "Spent too much time listening to my mother, probably." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear as the sky darkened. Somewhere out there, the 8th Fleet was patrolling the borders of human space. Invisible guardians keeping watch over 47 star systems. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was adjusting to a new reality. A reality where humanity was not a minor species to be ignored or exploited, but a power to be respected. "Mom," David said quietly, "do you think we did the right thing? Hiding the fleet, I mean. All those years of pretending to be weak." Lydia thought about it for a long moment. "I think we did what we had to do. We wanted peace. We still want peace. But peace only works if both sides want it. If someone decides to use violence, you have to be ready to respond." Teddy Roosevelt. What? An old leader from Earth history. He had a saying, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Lydia laughed. "I suppose that describes us pretty well. The biggest stick in the galaxy, as it turns out. And we still speak softly. We still try diplomacy first. We still prefer trading to fighting." Lydia looked up at the stars. "That's what makes us different, I think. We have the power to do terrible things, but we choose not to. We have the ability to conquer, but we prefer to coexist." David nodded slowly. "That's what Admiral Stone said in his report to the Federation Council. The measure of a civilization is not what it can do, but what it chooses to do. Smart man. He has his moments." They stood together as darkness fell completely, and the sky filled with stars. Each point of light was a sun. Each sun might have worlds. Each world might have people alien and strange, looking up at their own skies and wondering about the universe. And now, all of them knew about humanity. The children of Earth, the survivors of a death world, the species that had hidden weapons of unimaginable power while presenting a face of peaceful exploration. They knew, and they remembered. Do not attack humanity, because humanity will answer. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. At first, no one believed it. The Velkarth Dominion had ruled the Orion Spur for 12,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species. They had never been defeated. The idea that a minor civilization, a young species with barely 50 systems, had destroyed an entire Velkareth fleet was simply impossible, but the evidence could not be denied. Sensor logs from the few Velkareth ships that had managed to transmit data before their destruction showed everything. The arrival of the human fleet, the impossible ships with their impossible weapons, the utter annihilation of 300 warships in less than 15 minutes, and most disturbing of all, the footage of the gravitational compression cannon being fired, ships collapsing into themselves as if crushed by invisible hands, matter being reduced to nothing, a weapon that should not exist being used with casual efficiency. The galactic community was thrown into chaos. On the capital world of the Tharkal Consortium, the ruling council convened an emergency session. The Tharkal were a peaceful species, traders and diplomats who had maintained their independence through careful neutrality for millennia. They had observed humanity from a distance, categorizing them as a minor species of no particular importance. That assessment was being rapidly revised. "The humans have been lying to us," said Council of Rexton, her voice tight with barely contained fear. They presented themselves as peaceful explorers. They claimed to have minimal military capabilities. And all this time, they were hiding this. "Can we be certain of the recording's authenticity?" asked another counselor. "Perhaps they are fabricated. Propaganda designed to intimidate." "The Velkareth Dominion has confirmed the loss of their fleet," Rexton replied. "High Admiral Zethvorin is dead. All 300 of his ships are destroyed. There were no survivors." The council chamber fell silent. In 12,000 years, no one had ever inflicted such a defeat on the Velkareth. No one had even come close. "What do we do?" someone asked. VRX, then his answer was simple. "We do nothing. We leave the humans alone. And we pray they continue to leave us alone." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. In council chambers and throne rooms, in military headquarters and diplomatic compounds, every sentient species was reconsidering their understanding of humanity. The humans had been observed for decades. They were known to be unusual. Their high-gravity origin world, their aggressive evolutionary history, their strange tendency toward both violence and compassion. But they had seen content to explore, to trade, to build peaceful relationships with their neighbors. No one had suspected they were hiding the most powerful military force in the Orion Spur, on the Velkareth, homeworld of Torvex Prime. The Dominion was in crisis. High Admiral Zethvorin had been one of their greatest commanders. His fleet had been one of their most powerful, and both had been destroyed by a species that should have been beneath notice. The Supreme Council of the Dominion met in their great hall, a chamber that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations for 12,000 years. The 17 species that made up the Dominion were all represented, from the ruling Velkareth to the various client races that had been absorbed over the millennia. Supreme Commander Zelmorath, the highest authority in the Dominion military, stood before the council and delivered his report. "The fleet at New Geneva has been completely destroyed. We have lost 300 warships, 40,000 soldiers, and one of our most experienced admirals. The human colony remains in human hands. How is this possible?" demanded Grand Arbiter Kethvas, the political leader of the Dominion. "The humans were supposed to be weak. Our intelligence indicated minimal military capabilities." "Our intelligence was wrong," Zelmorath replied flatly. "Or more accurately, our intelligence was incomplete. The humans showed us what they wanted us to see: trading ships and patrol vessels, research stations and civilian colonies. They kept their true military hidden. Hidden where? We do not know. Our analysts believe they have secret shipyards located somewhere in uninhabited space, facilities designed to build and maintain warships without anyone knowing they existed. The fleet that destroyed Zethvorin's forces came from nowhere and disappeared afterward. We cannot find them. The council erupted in angry voices. This was unprecedented. No species had ever deceived the Dominion so completely. No species had ever posed such a threat. We must retaliate, Kethvis declared. We must show them that the Dominion will not accept such an insult. Mobilize the home fleet. Every ship we have. Zelmarath hesitated. Grand Arbiter, I must advise caution. Caution? They destroyed 300 of our ships, and they could destroy 3,000 more. Zelmarath activated a display showing the sensor data from the battle. Look at these readings. Their flagship alone destroyed 47 ships with a single shot. A single shot. We have no weapon that can match that. We have no defense against it. The display showed the gravitational compression cannon firing. Ships collapsing. Matter ceasing to exist. If we attack the humans directly, Zelmarath continued, we risk losing far more than a single fleet. We risk losing everything. The Dominion itself could fall. Kethvis stared at the display for a long moment. The anger drained from his face, replaced by something that looked very much like fear. Then what do you suggest? Zelmarath straightened his posture. I suggest we do something we have never done in 12,000 years of existence. I suggest we negotiate. The diplomatic delegation arrived at New Geneva 3 weeks after the battle. They came in a civilian transport, unarmed, broadcasting peace signals on all frequencies. The ship carried 3 Velkarth diplomats, along with representatives from 5 other Dominion species. They were authorized to negotiate a formal end to hostilities between the Dominion and the United Terran Federation. Admiral Stone received them aboard the Wrath of Terra. The meeting took place in a conference room that had been designed for exactly this purpose. A long table separated the 2 delegations. On one side sat Stone, along with several human diplomats and military advisors. On the other side sat the Velkarth representatives, their compound eyes taking in every detail of the ship that had destroyed their fleet. I am Ambassador Vethkar, said the lead Velkarth diplomat. I have been authorized by the Supreme Council to discuss terms for ending this conflict. Stone nodded. I'm Admiral Stone. I have authority to accept your surrender. Vethkar's mandibles clicked in what might have been irritation. We are not here to surrender, Admiral. We are here to negotiate. Then I'm afraid we have a problem. Stone leaned forward. You attacked the civilian colony. You killed thousands of our people. You attempted to enslave the survivors. From where I'm sitting, there's nothing to negotiate. The attack on New Geneva was a mistake, Vethkar admitted. High Admiral Zethphora acted without full understanding of your species' capabilities. He believed you were less than you are. That mistake has been corrected. Corrected? You call this corrected? Stone gestured to the viewport, where the debris field that had once been the Velkarth fleet was still visible. We destroyed 300 of your ships. 40,000 of your soldiers are dead. Is that what you call correcting a mistake? Vethkar was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, humbled. Admiral, I have studied your species since receiving this assignment. I have read your history. I have analyzed your culture. I have tried to understand what makes you different from all the other species the Dominion has encountered. He paused. Do you know what I found? Fear. Not your fear of us, but our fear of you. For 12,000 years, we have ruled this region of space. We have grown comfortable in our power. We have forgotten what it means to face a real challenge. Stone said nothing. He simply waited. You humans evolved on a world that tried to kill you every day, Vethkar continued. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. Your own planet was your enemy, and you defeated it. You spread across the stars not because you were safe, but because safety was something you had to create for yourselves. We call it survival, Stone said. It's what we do. Yes, and that is what makes you dangerous. The Dominion has never faced a species that was forged in such fire. We do not know how to fight you. We do not know how to defeat you. And after what happened here, I do not think we want to try. Vethkar reached into his robe and withdrew a data tablet. He placed it on the table and slid it towards Stone. This is our offer. A formal peace treaty between the Velkareth Dominion and the United Terran Federation. We will recognize your sovereignty over all systems you currently claim, including New Geneva. We will pay reparations for the damage caused by our attack. We will release any prisoners taken during the occupation. Stone picked up the tablet and reviewed its contents. The terms were generous. More than generous. They were the terms of a defeated power seeking to end the conflict before it became truly devastating. And in exchange? He asked.